This is the People's Water Board Coalition Water Wednesday webcast for January 4th, 2023.
Welcome, 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 beloved community, and Happy New Year to all of our viewers. Thanks for tuning in for yet another year of Water Wednesdays by the People's Water Board Coalition. And today, as our first show of 2023, we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Ken Ford, who is a member of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation. And he is here today to talk to us about potash mines, what they are, what kind of damage they do to our water systems and our natural resource, and what we can do to get involved and prevent more mines from being created and ensure that the ones that are here are cleaned up. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Valerie Jean Blakely, and our behind-the-scenes guy, Lou Novak. Thank you so much, Mr. Ford, for being here.
Well, glad to be here.
It's such an important, can you hear us okay, Ken?
I can't see myself, so I don't know what I look like, but
you look marvelous.
Okay, as long as you can see me.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
And as long as you can hear us, let me know if you're having any problems.
Good.
It's such an important conversation to have. It was really jarring when I first read about it, and I had no idea about potash. I had no idea what it was until Peggy Case emailed us and said, hey, you need to pay attention and talk to my friend Ken here. So Ken, I don't think anybody knows what potash is. You want to start with that? Like, what is it? What exactly is it?
Okay. The term potash refers to any of several minerals commonly used in agricultural fertilizers because they contain potassium, which is an essential plant nutrient. The term potash was derived from an early farming technique in which it involved leaching potash from wood ashes, and then it was concentrated through evaporation in large iron pots, hence the term potash.
Okay.
There's two forms of agricultural fertilizer. There's that potash is found in. One is sulfate of potash, which is potassium sulfate. The other is muriate of potash, which is potassium chloride. Potassium chloride has negative impacts on certain crops, and that's the type of potash that is being attempted to be mined in Osceola County right now. Fruits and vegetables are particularly affected by potassium chloride, simply because the plants take up the potassium, but they leave the chloride behind, and chloride is toxic to many plants.
Mm-hmm. So it ruins the soil that practice, like really ruins the soil for being able to grow food at all then, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's a research article in which 3 soil scientists from the University of Illinois have research showing the toxicity of potassium chloride. And they conclude, and I will quote from them so I don't get it wrong, their article.
And Ken, this is the one that you're talking about, the one that you gave us with the link that we're going to be posting in the comments?
Right.
Okay, just so everybody knows, our listeners, this is going to be posted. The link for this is going to be posted in the live comments, so you can go after the show and check it immediately out. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay. So in their abstract, these gentlemen, which are soil scientists, state that an extensive survey of more than 2,100 yield response trials confirmed that potassium chloride fertilization is unlikely to increase crop yield. Contrary to the perception of potassium chloride as a qualitative commodity, more than 1,400 field trials predominantly documented a detrimental effect of this fertilizer on the quality of major food feed and fiber crops with serious implications for soil productivity and human health. Then they go on to say that since the 1970s, excessive potassium usage has been further intensified by the buildup maintenance concept that inflates fertilizer consumption under the pretext of preventing yield reduction, and thus accentuates the economic interest of the fertilizer industry over those of the producer, the farmer.
So do we find that this potassium chloride is in most major agricultural fertilizers?
No. The other form of potash, the potassium sulfate, is a valuable type of potash. It's utilized by plants. It promotes plant growth. It has sulfur in it, which is beneficial to many soils. And problem with it is that it's more expensive than potassium chloride. Potassium chloride is relatively cheap compared to potassium sulfate.
Okay.
The problem is that as the plants take potassium out of the potassium chloride, they leave the chloride behind, which soon becomes toxic. If you've ever used Clorox, you know all about chloride.
Yes.
It's nasty stuff.
Yes, I've seen some of the damage that Clorox can do, even compared to like major off-brand bleaching agents. Like Clorox will literally eat your clothes up.
And then they use chlorine in swimming pools.
Yes.
You know, it's not something you want to try to grow things in.
Absolutely.
So
it's really a matter of them trying to be more economical for the companies versus the health of the community and the environment.
Right. It's something that has been sold to farmers, and they bought into it thinking that if they add KCl to their crops, they'll get increased yields. But in fact, the study shows that that's not the case.
And what's the effect on the water sources around where the farmers are using this? Is it poisoning the water sources?
That I can't tell you. I don't know if there's even been any studies done, but it's a fertilizer, and most fertilizers do end up in groundwater as runoff into the Great Lakes, and so on and so forth.
Which is how we end up with like algae blooms, right? Yeah.
Correct. We've got a product here being hyped by the potassium chloride manufacturers at the expense of farmers.
Right. Right. And like any other corporation, they lie. They will lie. We see it.
Yeah, big business. Real big business. The only time I ever saw a potential for potash that comes from potassium chloride was when I'm a forester and I work with landowners that own forest resources. I had a landowner call me and he grows potatoes and he wanted to clear a played out field that was very sandy and low fertility. And he wanted me to clear the trees that were there so he could grow potatoes. And I picked up a handful of soil and it just, just like an hourglass, the sand just trickled down. And I said, how do you grow anything on soil like this? And he looked at me and he said, Ken, with water and fertilizer, you can grow anything.
Okay.
So you take a outfield and you add potassium chloride and a bunch of water, and yeah, you can grow corn, which is used for gasohol, which uses more energy than it actually produces.
And a lot of water.
Immediately, the idea of sustainability pops into your head. Like, what are we doing?
Right. What is the situation then, Ken, with the proposed potash mine? Can you tell us about how that will, what is with the potash line in Osceola mine in Osceola?
Well, first I'll tell you how potash is mined up here, or attempted to. It's a process called solution mining. This potash exists at a depth of 8,500 feet deep. a mile and a half deep. It's embedded in a huge salt formation, which used to be an ocean, which covered Michigan millions of years ago. It's a very narrow band, not probably more than 2 feet thick, embedded in this salt formation. And what they do is they drill a hole down 8,500 feet deep to the potash, and then they begin injecting hot water to dissolve the potash. Then they have another well that they drill that brings the solution back up to the surface and under pressure to a refinery where the sodium chloride and the potassium chloride are separated, and this requires a continual pumping of approximately 1,200 gallons per minute of fresh, clean water to dissolve the salt. That amounts to 1.7 million gallons per day. And you have to use fresh water because once the water becomes briny, it doesn't dissolve the salt anymore. So what do you do with that salt water? When it becomes too briny to dissolve, you inject it into a deep well, disposal well, where it is put out of use for human consumption ever again. It's
So they're
gone.
using that much water, like just so everybody kind of understands this, let's just take that in. They're using that much water per day. And, and
That cannot be
never gonna be able
recycled.
to be used ever again. It's ruined. And they have to
Right.
use fresh water to do it.
So they keep drawing 1,200 gallons a minute. We're adding it to the solution and dissolving the salt.
Unbelievable.
And 10 years ago, Michigan Potash came along, and basically it's a one-man company. The owner lives in Colorado. He has no employees, but he bought up leases from a previous attempt at mining potash, which was abandoned by 3 different companies. He bought up their leases, and he basically holds leases for 16,000 acres of private land and some state land to mine potash. And what he did is he proposed building a $1.2 billion plant 10 years ago to mine and refine potash. So the initial forecast was to produce 600,000 ton of potash a year. And the plant would require 8 solution mines and 3 disposal wells to do that. Eagle permitted these wells.
Of course,
Of course they did.
As they produce or permit most things. And they also registered with Eagle to withdraw 1,200 gallons of fresh water per day, which Eagle permitted. Subsequent to that,
Yeah, we wonder why Eagle is not pushing for these companies to cease and desist. Companies like that do this potash mining, companies like Blue Triton. It's just it's beyond me.
Well, you can tell who they work for. You can tell who they're bought and paid by.
Work for them, they have to be getting some type of payout. It's like, how do you not understand that that's why we have cities that are ghost towns, because a city is nothing without the community that's in it. And once you destroy the ability for that community to thrive, you have
grow food and have fresh water.
You have nothing. And yet you're still supporting these huge corporations that are coming in and destroying the natural resources, the environment, and the ecosystem in these communities.
And this guy sounds like he's not accountable to anybody. He doesn't have any employees or anything. It sounds like this guy's just buying up land and he's not accountable to anybody. Is that?
Well, he's buying leases. He's not buying the land, but he bought a little bit of land for this proposed refinery. But he lives in Colorado. He was asked at a public meeting whether he planned on moving to Michigan. He said no. He also said at a public meeting that he could not guarantee there wouldn't be a catastrophic failure with this venture.
Nor does he care.
Keep in mind, the important thing to keep in mind is most of Osceola draws its drinking water from groundwater wells. We have water wells up here. So subsequent to his pronouncement 10 years ago, now they claim that they plan to produce 1 million tons of potassium chloride a year. But their water usage remains the same, however.
Impossible.
But in fact, doubling the amount of KCl production is going to require twice as much water.
Of course.
Uh-huh.
Like you don't have to even be a mathematician to figure that out, right?
You know,
And so
honestly, I don't
now-
hold this gentleman accountable. I
Well-
don't, because he does what our state is allowing him to do.
Yeah.
Well, Val, we're hopeful with the new administration and a democratically controlled Congress, things are going to change. We've been promised that before,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but things were beaten down pretty good, when the Republicans were in control. Not to become political about this, but we have hopes for the Whitmer administration.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're talking about 3 million gallons of fresh water a day.
Mm.
Wow.
And that's 24/7. They're injecting this fresh water down into this 8,500 foot deep deposit and bringing it back. And over the course of the year, you're talking 1.1 billion gallons of fresh water, which will be contaminated with brine and disposed of in deep well injection, via deep well injection, and never available for human consumption again.
And it's almost guaranteed to leach into the drinking water because people are using their groundwater with that
Well,
to drink.
there's definitely that possibility, but then also the fact that this brine solution is transported via pipelines to the refinery, and these pipelines are notorious for breaking. We
Yes.
have a previous mine over here about a mile and a half away that actually is still purging 3 sources of groundwater from their pipelines bursting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then if a pipeline bursts, our situation here is we're very hilly, we're very wet. We have lots of streams and lakes and seeps and wetlands. And when those pipelines break, for example, their test facility, their proposed mining facility is surrounded by 2 streams. Stream on each side, which is only 200 yards from Bull Kill Marsh, which is the biggest freshwater marsh in Osceola County. It's home to significant wildlife like trumpeter swans, beaver, otter, numerous waterfowl. If a pipeline breaks on that facility, the brine will almost immediately enter these wetlands that are only 200 yards from our big marsh.
Wow.
So water destruction and consumption are huge issues with this project.
Absolutely. And it's just so angering because I'm sitting here and I'm just listening to you speak about the sheer amount of fresh water they use and are contaminating when we have people throughout our state that don't have clean water to drink, that don't have accessibility to water at all, and yet you're allowing these companies to come in and do things like this and destroy even more of our freshwater ecosystem.
For a product that is really not required by agriculture.
Right.
Exactly.
Is this like a oil spill that is impossible to clean up? Like I do a lot of organizing around tar sands oil spills, and the one that happened in the Kalamazoo River, they still to this day haven't been able to fully restore or clean up. You're never able to clean it up. Is this brine kind of that same kind of situation where once it's done, it's done? It's just.
Well, we know that they had 3 spills over at this previous facility, and as far as we know, they're still purging the groundwater. It takes years.
Yeah.
We've got, this stuff gets into the groundwater, and it's toxic. It's toxic to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's heartbreaking.
Anyway, the company has avoided disclosing its actual anticipated water consumption and most other information about their venture, in part because they resist efforts by the Osceola County Planning Commission to understand and plan for what would become the largest development in county history.
Right.
Since Osceola County is not zoned, that commission cannot compel the company to come forward and answer our repeated requests.
Wow.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
which is just
So
criminal.
basically,
Yeah.
our
Meanwhile, the Michigan Public Service MPSC hides behind provisions of, or Michigan Potash and Salt Company hides behind provisions of Michigan's infamous Mineral Wells Act. Are you familiar with that? That
No.
prevents people from disclosing of any information about a solution mining operation without the consent of the company involved.
Wow.
It's a
Wow.
manifestation of the raw political power exerted by the state's mining industry.
Mhm.
You
It
can't
really
get
is.
You cannot get any information about a mining operation in Michigan unless the company that's mining allows Eagle to provide that information.
But yet on an
well.
application, if someone needs to get state benefits and they're a younger person, i.e. getting FIP or FAP, one of the questions on the application is, where was your child conceived at? You can dig into someone's personal life that much, but you can't investigate where these mining companies are. That is absolutely absurd.
It's well, all the way around. It's just heartbreaking. Ken, what can people do to get involved and help? I know that you all have stuff on your website and things. What can people really do to get involved and stop this proposed mining project?
That would be the first thing I would recommend people do. Go to the Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation's website, which is mcwcmi.org.
Yes.
And then click on water priorities and then click on potash mining. And
Okay.
you'll find almost everything I've talked about in there, plus a lot more, a lot of pictures of the terrain up here, and just a lot of good information about what's been going on here and what we're up against. That would be the place to start to get a good grounding in this, because like you say, most people don't even know what potash is.
Right.
The second thing would be to contact the Michigan Economic Development Council, which is MEDC. They're the ones that are proposing giving this guy $225 million inducement grant in the form of tax-free municipal bonds.
Wow, always tax-free.
This is up for consideration now. And what you want to do there, they have a Zoom meeting. They meet once a month, and they have a Michigan Strategic Fund arm of their organization. This is the state of Michigan, though. And you can join that Zoom meeting. It's usually around the middle of the month, but conveniently, they don't publish a agenda until about 2 or 3 days before the meeting. So you have to keep going online to find out when they meet. Okay. And it would be valuable if people would send letters to the Michigan Economic Development Council with asking hard questions about, why are you committing $225 million
right
to something that really is not needed? I mean,
right.
Once COVID hit and the war in Ukraine started, everybody, I mean, this guy hired lobbyists to go to Lansing and say, hey, the Russians, we get 12% of our potash from Russia, and we can't have that. You know, what they're not aware of is that 80% of our potash comes from Canada. The largest potash mines in the world are in Canada, our friendliest trading partner. And if we need another 12% increase in potash, all you need to do is make a couple of phone calls to Saskatchewan and you'll have trainloads of potash here in a minute.
Wow.
Canada is rapidly expanding their potash mining capacity. They sit on a railroad their mines are on railroads. They can load this potash on the trains and bring it here. This facility has no rail access. The potash would have to be shipped out by truck. They're talking 160 trucks a day going down the roads here.
What a mess. Yeah.
But the bottom line is there's no way they can compete with Canada. Canada potash will always be cheaper, and there's never a fear of running out of potash. Not with Canada right next door.
Right. So that's, well, Ken, well, thank you so much for sharing this really important information with us, Ken. And really hope that our viewers can get involved. Go to the website and find out how to get involved, but also go to those meetings and stand against it. Also, we have bills on the floor to protect groundwater, and I'm going to have to look into them. I think that we should definitely, might even have to call Yusuf Rabi myself and ask him if these bills would be, if that brine from in those injection that would be injected into those wells, if that would be, something that could be, a policy or something that could, if it could be added or some way to stop it. Because he's got these groundwater bills out. There's no reason for that not to be a part of it. Right there,
Well, we used to have some of the best environmental laws in the country until a legislature decided to change the laws. And now this operation, which will, if it came to fruition, would impact 100 square miles of Pecasta and Osceola counties.
Wow.
Has not even required, Eagle has not even required an environmental impact statement for a project of this size. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
It really is.
I think that would be like, so it's devastating because it would probably even affect further than that, because if it gets into a situation,
rivers and streams are all connected.
Any type of spill into the Great Lake, that would if not affect further, at least the tri-state area.
Yeah.
Well, this mining would only be 4 miles from the Muskegon River. So if there's a leak or a spill, it gets into Bokill Creek, which then flows 4 miles to the Muskegon. And a lot of people draw their water out of the Muskegon River.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Well, thank you to our listeners and viewers. Please share this out. People don't know. I didn't know, and I'm somebody who is abreast of everything that has to do with water. I was shocked. It was just one of those things that really jarred me, A, that I didn't know, and B, that that nobody else did. It was just, so please share this out. We're going to be sharing things as we learn about them from Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation, any kind of resistance that they have going on, mounted mobilization, anything. We will be sharing it on all of our social media and keeping you all abreast of it so that you can get involved. This is really, really important and affect all of us. If they allowed this to happen. So, and thank you, Ken, for your work on this. And it sounds like you've been doing this for a long time. So thank you for that. And always, Nicole, it's always great to be on this journey with you. And to our listeners at home, I hope your new year is starting off wonderfully. And I hope you're warm and you have access to all the water that you need in your life. Look out for each other and try to stay afloat. Bye.